Okay, once again, thank you so much for making time to our fourth webinar. And I must say that I'm so excited to having all of you here. I know people will be joining, but I think today we have a lot of things to talk about. So on behalf of the Faculty of Engineering in the Built Environment of the University of the Witwatersrand, the Academic Development Unit of the faculty, I want to welcome you all to today's webinar. I also want to use this opportunity to thank the director of the ADU, in the person of Professor Rodney Genga. I think he will join us later. And I also want to thank my...
Yeah, Desmond. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thanks. I also want to thank all my other colleagues from the Academic Development Unit and from the academic support from the university. I see Miss Razia here. Thanks so much for coming through. It's much appreciated. I wouldn't want to bore anyone with too many details, so I would just zoom right in. I know Prof. Fred McGonlorry is on the call. And Prof, can you share your screen, or do you want me to share mine for you before I introduce you? Prof, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Prof, I can hear you. Good.
Cool.
Can you share your screen from there, or do you want me to share?
Let me see. Share. On Team, I've never really shared, so you gotta show me where.
So you will see that there is a square with an arrow pointing up, close to where the speaker is, where your mic is. There is an arrow pointing up. Guys, we'll start shortly. Let's just deal with the technical challenges, and then we'll zoom right in. Prof, if you can't find it, then I would have to share my screen for you.
Desmond, if you mind.
Yes.
Prof, you can reach the top right corner. You should see the arrow right next to the red leave button. That should allow you to share. Just top right corner of your screen.
Yeah.
Just next to the arrow pointing up. If you click on that, on the first page that opens up there, if you click on that particular page, it will allow you to open any screen on your computer. Desmond, you can proceed. Thank you.
No problem. Yes, once I see it on the screen, then I will start. We'll hit the road running.
Yeah. So I am not seeing that arrow. It keeps saying. Yeah. So just share your screen. Let's go. Let's go for it. Okay.
Okay.
I hope you can all hear me clearly.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right, so I'm ready when you are.
Can you guys see the screen?
Yes, Desmond, we can see.
Good. Let me put it in a slide mode. Good. Okay. Thank you. So let me quickly introduce the speaker. It's Fred McGonlorry. Is an engineer, inventor, novelist, educator, and a thought leader. And is currently, after spending more than 2 decades in the United States, is currently the provost and president at Academic City College, Then he was also the founding dean of the Faculty of Engineering at Ashesi University. He was also the founding executive director of the Ghana Climate Innovation Center, backed by the World Bank. He was the vice president of the new product development. I think I'm just, sorry, I'm getting some feedback. Can we mute our mics, please? He has held various roles in engineering, strategy, marketing, and research, and has worked with numerous institutions in the United States, including Princeton University, Siemens Healthcare, Beaton and Dickinson and Co. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree, summa cum laude, in manufacturing engineering from the Central State University, with a minor in applied mathematics, a Master of Science in Engineering, Science, and Mechanics from Virginia Tech, and a PhD in materials engineering from the University of Dayton. He also holds an MBA from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. He has a lot of awards, and I just selected some few of them. One is that he was the Black Engineer of the Year's Most Promising Scientist in 2008, and was the 2009 finalist of the NASA Astronaut Candidate Corps. In 2008, he also won the New Jersey State Healthcare Business Innovation Heroes Award. He has made incredible contributions to the development of computer-aided process architecture and automation. And he was also a former director of R&D in one of the companies in the US. He has over 40 plus patents, and still there are more patents coming. He's authored over 9 books, including 3 novels. He is a member of the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, Society of Manufacturing Engineers, and MIT Alfred P. Sloan Fellow. Now, today, he will be talking to us about advice to a young scientist. Now, scientist here, science is more of a spectrum. So we have, I know in the audience, we have social scientists, applied scientists, pure scientists. And so he would share his perspective on what it takes as we are all starting this journey, or some of us, we are in different phases of this journey, what we need to watch out for and how we can do this. I think it was Isaac Newton that said the far that he was able to see was because he was standing or sitting on the shoulders of giants that went ahead of him. A mentor is a picture of your future. So I think on this note, Prof, can I hand over to you? Please go ahead, sir. Hello, Prof. I think your mic is muted.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Go ahead, sir. Good.
What's going on here? So just pardon me. Hello. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Klenam, for your very kind words. I'm excited to be able to join you guys today. I appreciate talking to your team. Your university has always been one that has been in my crosshairs for several years. So I'm really, really privileged to be speaking to your team today. So, advice to a young scientist. You know, as I contemplated this topic, I was actually wondering whether it's just for scientists or it's for everybody. So on slide number 2, I have a picture of 3 gentlemen, Walt Disney, Colonel Sanders, and Edison. And I'm sure you all know the story of these men. Sanders was a soldier and founded KFC. Walt Disney was fired from his job as lacking talent, and Edison failed so many times. And so really what I will try to do today is, instead of going through a list of attributes that I think you should watch out for that will define your success, I actually want to tell a story through these men and many other stories. So let's go to the next slide, please. So when I started thinking about what to deliver to you guys today, the usual thing came to mind. Come in with a list of things that you think young scientists ought to have in order to be successful. So they have to be passionate about what they do. Without passion, there will be no outcomes. And then build your stamina, be a good communicator, be a weatherman, be a transdisciplinary person, be ethical, and persevere. These were all pieces of advice we got growing up, whether from parents or grandparents, from teachers, and that comes naturally when it is your turn to pass information on to the next generation. So I'll do something a little different. Go to the next slide for me, please. So here is an English adventurer, Ernest Shackleton, that as recent as 1914, he set out for the South Pole. After traveling over 1,700 miles across the Ross Sea near what we call New Zealand today, with 27 men, his ship got stuck in ice for many, many months. Mission aborted. Ship eventually sunk. Everybody survived. There were no incidents of cannibalism, something that was quite common at the time when people were caught in this kind of adversity. And all her crew members survived. Now, what is quite interesting on this slide is the word endurance, which I have highlighted in red for obvious reasons. That if you want to be a successful scientist, you have to build your stamina. You will be confronted with challenges. You will be confronted with adversity. But you have to endure, you have to persevere. Endurance was the ship. The men that boarded it knew exactly what they were on there for. So if you move to the next slide, we'll see the caliber of men that were aboard, that boarded Endurance that day. So when Shackelford was looking forward to set out on this adventure, he put an advert in the newspapers. And this was what the advert read: men wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success. So what is quite interesting about this advert was that he painted the real true picture of the journey. He didn't hold anything back. He didn't say it was going to be an old boys club, hunky-dory, good food, nice vitamin C, everybody will come with their teeth intact. But he said the journey was going to be hazardous. And for every young scientist, engineer, wherever you are starting, it is proper for you to build your stamina, knowing very well that you are going to face challenges. And the essence of that challenge is not to scare you from making the first step, it's to paint reality for you. So if you want to succeed, you need to prepare for the journey. You need to have the right people on the boat. And you need to know that there is honor when there is success. And so you have to work at it. So let's go to the next slide, please. Now, when you take a typical job ads today, completely different from what Shackelford said in 1914. It says account executive needed, minimum 5 years experience. You must have working knowledge of industry. Come work for a fantastic, fast-growing company with great pay and great benefits. Now, this is a complete contrast from what you saw earlier. Reality is not really painted here because companies have started shifting towards telling a different narrative. You are being told it's all going to be well. It's a fantastic company. And I want young engineers to understand that it will not always be fantastic. You have to push new boundaries. You have to go transdisciplinary. You have to learn new things. You have to work with new people. You know, one of my favorite scientists is Robert Langer, who is a professor at MIT and Harvard. And Langer has probably received every single award an engineer or a scientist could receive except the Nobel Prize. He has over 800 patents, and he continues to push new boundaries, transdisciplinary learning in biomedical, in medicine. You name the field, David Langer has and Robert Langer has an influence in that area. So as a young and upcoming, do not say my specialty is in materials and it's in titanium materials, or my field is in human psychology, human biology, and that is where I want to spend the rest of my career. If you read history, everything from geometric analysis, all these areas were created by folks that were pushing new boundaries. One of the things that surprised me the most when I returned to Ghana 6 years ago was that if you were an applied mathematician, you couldn't go and teach in the Department of Psychology because you'd be told you don't have a degree in psychology. And then the question you ask is if psychology is becoming so statistical and is going to require some strong applied mathematics basis, what is so wrong with somebody who is an applied mathematician who is capable and willing to learn the terminology of psychology and to create a new frontier in that field? Everywhere else in the world where research is of value, that is exactly what is coming. That is what is happening. So my advice to young scientists and engineers is that your glory lies at the intersection of new frontiers where knowledge and technologies merge. And it doesn't matter if you're in the applied sciences, social sciences, you can be a pioneer in new fields. That is what will bring you glory. Glory will not come to you if you're only focused on what is already known, what is traditional, what makes you comfortable. Glory lies when you push the boundaries, when new fields merge, when old and new fields find an intersection. That is where you can actually celebrate success. Shall we move to the next? So as I went through my list, I'm thinking to myself, what other group of people in human society and in human history have been so successful? And what came to my mind was entrepreneurs are actually what we should all strive to become. They have a unique aptitude in how they think about the world. They see opportunity or opportunities where nobody else sees them. They see them all around us. They don't take no for an answer. Every failure is an opportunity to try something new. You know, many years ago, I met a young lady in Silicon Valley, and she was a CEO of a startup tech company. And she spoke to my class from Sloan. And she said, I pitched 100 times before I got my first investor. I pitched 100 times. And so somebody's hand goes up and say, what kept you going? And she said, after every pitch, I learned something new, and I use that information to improve on the next pitch. That is what you ought to do as a young and coming scientist. You can't let failure stop you. And when I say you need to build your stamina, that's what I mean. So when you look at boxers, they jog, they run, and then you ask yourself, why is a boxer running up and down the hill? That's not what happens in the ring. In the ring, you are confined. But what you do running up and down the hill is building stamina. So as a young and coming up scientist, engineer, social scientist, applied scientist, you have to build your stamina. You have to psych yourself psychologically that there may be failures, there may be setbacks, but you cannot afford to take failure as an exit strategy. Your behavior is important also. You know, I went on a road many years ago with a marketing team from Becton and Dickinson. I had just returned from business school and I had transitioned to business strategy. And before business school, I was an R&D director. And I used to tell the marketers that they were so dumb. Look at this beautiful technology that we've developed and you can't sell. You are here whining. Do you know how many nights of hard labor went into it? And then for the first time, I was on the other end. And we got chased out. I was shadowing these marketing people. We got chased out of UCLA, University of Los Angeles, by a procurement officer who was tired seeing the same group of people, different people from the same company. And so the next morning, as we prepared to go for our rounds, and bear in mind, I had no idea what marketing and sales was. I was an R&D guy. So I asked Mike, I said, where are we going today? And he said, we are going back to UCLA. I said, UCLA? He said, yes. To the same guy who drove us away yesterday? And he said, yes. I said, oh, no. So he said, Fred, here's the first rule of sales. No today means the time is not right. You need to keep going until he buys something. And then you come back again, he'll buy more. And then the next thing you know, you are playing golf with him. And he'll continue to buy more from you. So we showed up again. The guy opens the door. He sees us, he slams the door into our faces and walks back into his office. And we sat in the waiting area for about 2-3 hours until he came out. He realized Mike wasn't going anywhere until he spoke to us. So that is to say that when those challenges come, you have to adapt. You have to persevere. You have to find continuous creative ways to solve problems. I grew up in an environment where when people were offended, they'll go years without talking to you because you've offended their sensibilities. And I lived and worked in an American environment where you could yell at each other all day, and after work, you can have a drink. So an entrepreneurial mindset is not necessarily for you to productize your ideas. It would be nice if as a young scientist, you can come up with new ideas that goes into enterprise. But what I want to focus on today is that mindset that tells you there will be challenges, you need to build networks, you need to persevere, you shouldn't back down, and you need to find mentors. And you can apply this in multiple professions, whether you are doing a startup, whether you are in the army, in whatever profession you find yourself, an entrepreneurial mindset can take you far. Next slide, please. So here are some underlying competencies that I would like you to take away from this talk today. You have to have a keen eye for identifying opportunities and research areas are opportunities. You have to be willing to look at the clear intersections of emerging fields and technologies. So if you're a roboticist, you need to understand what is happening in AI. You need to understand what is happening in biomedical. You need to understand what is happening in marketing and sales. Today, there are no weddings where drones do not show up. In fact, some people are so brave that even drones deliver the wedding rings. So being stuck in robotics is not good enough. Diversifying your thought processes to find new areas where you can apply that knowledge will take you far. Building and managing networks. You have to build strong relationships. You have to go to conferences. When you collect business cards, you need to know when to send a thank you note. When you ask questions, you need to be able to follow up so that those people know you beyond the question that you ask at the conference. You have to be innovative. And sometimes we use that word so loosely. Innovation means a lot. It means, being on the lookout for what is happening within your field and its adjacencies. You have to be, if you don't have all the resources, you have to partner with those that have resources. Next slide, please.
You remember the
Next slide.
This is nonsense, Siri.
Prof, it's playing.
Okay. Can you hear?
Yes, Prof.
Desmond, I'm not able to hear the video.
How old is she?
Can you guys hear the video?
No, you might need to, when you share.
No, I'm struggling to hear the video.
Okay, guys, hold on. Also, let me say this. I think there are people with their mics on. Can you please stand down, put your mics off so that we can do this? I'm gonna play it again and just let me know.
Sorry, Desmond. I think you have to click to allow sound to play on your sharing.
I have to play it from here?
No, Desmond can play it, but he just needs to unshare. And then when he's sharing again, he'll just give it permission to play with an audio. So unshare, Desmond, and then when you share again, it will see a little tab that will pop up that will say share sound.
Okay.
And so just unshare and then share again. Thank you, sir.
Okay, did I lose you guys?
Prof, you haven't. I'm just trying to get that one sorted now.
Okay, so as you are trying to sort that out, so this is Stan. I'm sure you've all heard about the Spider-Man. And he had a very brilliant idea of sending out the last version of their magazine with Spider-Man on it. And his publisher thought that was the dumbest idea. Anyway, after convincing him, they were able to send that issue out. And when the sales came back, it was amazing.
Prof, so can you guys hear me now? The video should be playing. Can you hear?
Yes, we can hear.
Yeah. cannot hear the sound.
Yeah, I cannot hear, so I don't know if anybody else is hearing it.
Yeah, no, it sounds, we can't hear anything.
Okay, so we'll share the deck. We share the deck. So the point I just wanted to make with that video.
This was my reaction, the reaction he gave me.
Okay, I can hear it now.
And that is the worst idea I have ever heard. First of all, people hate spiders, so you can't call a hero Spider-Man. You want him to be a teenager? Teenagers can only be sidekicks. And you want him to have personal problems. And you know what a superhero is? They don't have personal problems. So we were about to kill the magazine. It wasn't selling well, and we were sending the last issue to press. When you do the last issue of a magazine, nobody cares what you put in it because the book is dying. Just to get it out of my system, I put Spider-Man in Amazing Fantasy. Feature him on the cover. A month later, all the sales figures came in. My publisher came racing into my office. Stan, you remember that character we both loved so much, Spider-Man? He said, let's do him as a series. Now, why am I telling you this? If you have an idea that you genuinely think is good, don't let some idiot talk you out of it. If there is something that you feel is good, something you want to do, something that means something to you, try to do it. Because I think you can only do your best work if you're doing what you want to do, and if you're doing it the way you think it should be done. And if you can take pride in it after you've done it, no matter what it is. So don't let idiots talk you out of something that you think is good. Just do your thing, do it as well as you, that's the important thing. Don't shirk. Whatever you do, give it your best shot. You'll be glad you did. Excelsior! Thank you.
All right, so I've run out of time here, but I think the message is clear. You know, if your heart is somewhere, you need to chase it, you need to pursue it. The caveat I'll add to that is you need to apprentice, you need to learn, you need to be humble, you need to discover the passion in yourself. You need to be a lateral thinker, and there is a song here that you get a chance when you get a deck to play, but you need to always start with why. Why am I doing what I'm doing? It is in that you discover your passion. And please be a lateral thinker, take on challenges, find alternatives, think logically, engage others, build networks, build your stamina. So I'll stop here and I'll take any questions if there are any, but we'll make this deck available to those who really want to spend time going through it all. So I do appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all, and hopefully next time we'll get the technical challenges sorted out sooner. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you so much. We'll be going into the Q&A session soon. I must also apologize with this the challenges we have with the network. But Prof, when you were talking about Shackleton, it reminds me of what Sir Raymond Presley said. He said, for scientific discovery, give me Scott. For speed and efficiency of travel, give me Amundsen. But when disaster strikes and all hope is gone, get down on your knees and pray for Shackleton. I think that we have learned a mouthful. I know you were talking about Bob Langer, and I also want to bring this to the attention of everyone that Bob Langer, when he finished with his PhD in chemical engineering, nobody would employ him until he started off in a nutrition department at MIT. Today, I'm happy to report that Bob Langer is the most cited engineer in history. He has about 346,000 citations. He has 150 patents. He's called the Thomas Edison of engineering, and he has created over 42 startups that have become Fortune 500 companies. But when this young man started, nobody could give him the chance or the opportunity until he endured and he persevered. On that note, you've just heard what the man said. Don't let some idiot talk you out of what you want to do. Can we welcome some questions? Please, just shoot by showing your hand and just take the platform and ask your questions. This is somebody that have done it. He's tried it. He's tried his ideas, and he's shown that engineering works. And we are just starting this journey. So please, you can shoot your questions. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
And you can ask any questions, you know, on this topic or others.
Hi, sir.
Yes, go ahead, Kakiso, go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to find out if the slides will be made available.
Yes, please. The slides will be made available. I would make the slides available to everyone. The slides and also the videos will be made available to everyone that is attending this webinar. Yes. Prof. Genga, I saw your hands up.
Yeah, so mine is just a comment. First of all, just a really huge thank you to Prof. Magboloni to just come here and just give us a presentation. We're quite excited and happy to have you here. And more of a question, because I can see your provost in the City College you have there in Ghana. How do we start to educate differently for research? That's pretty much, if you can comment on that for the young upcoming researchers that might end up in academia moving forward. How do we start to educate to think differently? Because here you typically find, as a researcher, you're solving a particular problem in your research field, and you end up in the academic route, which is great and which is good to help build the next generation. But there's also the aspect of quote unquote entrepreneurship that you've introduced today, that you can think just beyond fighting to solve that problem in your research field, but applying that same rigor and dedication to your research in getting out there in terms of market to maybe sell a product you're trying to produce. You maybe want to comment on how young researchers, young academics can start to think in that direction. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So it's quite an interesting question, because most of the time in this part of the world, we get bogged down on the research and the publication, and then we miss the part where you can actually make more impact in society. And Desmond touched on that a little bit with Robert Langer, who has been able to take his research and commercialize it. And I tell you, I actually met him when I was a student at MIT. I went to him and I was looking for an opportunity to take some ideas from his lab into commercialization. But I was bounded by my company to go back, so I never really could do that. But I think what researchers should keep in mind is that the old paradigm where multinational companies used to invest billions and billions of research and keep them on the shelf is over. Now, multinational companies like the Siemens, the GEs, actually want their scientists to go into the field and talk to customers and try to figure out what customers are looking for, so that they can tailor their research outcomes into solutions that those customers could use. So for our young scientists and engineers that are coming up, I think, you know, staying in the lab is no longer just sufficient. If you're working in an area where you know industries that are playing clearly at that intersection, I think it's prudent to make time to go out there and figure out what they are doing, to find research opportunities where you can actually solve problems for these industries. So I think my guidance is you have to go to conferences and articulate your value proposition. You have to identify institutions where you can form relationships with them to make sure that most of your research work is applied and can go into products. I don't see any other way. Maybe in South Africa, the issue may be a little different, but in Ghana, in the 6 years that I've been here, it's virtually been impossible to see researchers actually take their projects out of the lab into the marketplace because the venture capital market is nascent. Everybody wants something that is already functioning. Procurement seems to the best way that we solve problems here. We'd rather go to China and buy stuff rather than support local inventors. But I think we need to go out there and speak more. We need to go out there, identify the key stakeholders and engage them. I think that is the only way that science and technology can be more relevant in our society than it is today. Part of the reason why we are not accorded the recognition we deserve is that society is not seeing immediate results of the things that we do. They don't see the immediate impact, and we need to change that.
Thank you, Prof. Answered very well. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I see Ntumba. Ntumba, please go ahead and ask your question, please.
Yes, great. Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you very much for the presentation, Prof. Since you invited us to ask anything, basically any question, just wanted to pick your brain a little bit on the issue of energy access. The continent, I mean, sub-Saharan Africa, I think there's a figure of something like close to 50% or north of 50% of the population does not have access to reliable electricity. And yet we have resources, we also have human capital in terms of engineers. So what can be done as engineers to close that gap, you know, related to energy access? Thank you.
So, you know, my answer to that will be a little funny. I think the most brilliant of our population, which are the scientists and engineers, have often shied away from leadership. Until this continent starts being run by engineers and scientists, we're not going anywhere. That's the short answer. I think most of the times the politicians really do not know what to do. They don't have the technical wherewithal. That is one of the main reasons why they run to China to buy everything. Because they don't have that level of comprehension that it takes to develop a technology-driven society. So, like you said, if you look at the continent from Mozambique, Angola, all the way through Nigeria, and Nigeria probably has more scientists than many other places in the world. In fact, there is no university in the United States that I've been associated with that doesn't have a Nigerian professor. So knowledge, skills, and intellect is not the problem. The problem is policy. The problem is policy. So I really think that for those of us who have the knowledge to really move the needle for the continent, until we actually start getting into these think tanks, getting into positions where we can influence these decision-making processes, it will be very difficult, really, really difficult. I mean, the kinds of the Nkrumahs are no longer on this continent. You know, we have a road in Ghana which was built 60 years ago, and it's still the best road that we have. And Nkrumah was not a scientist, but Nkrumah traveled, worked abroad, and he knew exactly what this country could benefit from. The Akosombo Dam speaks for itself. The Tama Harbor speaks for itself. But in the absence of visionary leaders, we need to have technocrats in positions where such decisions can be made. And so what we lack is not intellect. What we lack is not the willingness. What we lack is the policy direction.
Thank you so much, Prof.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, there is a question by Gertrude, but let me also say this. They say it is only in Africa that those who have power don't have ideas, and those who have ideas don't have power. That's just by the way. Power could mean electricity, it could also mean anything. Anyway, Gertrude said, I want to ask, as a young female engineer, how does one deal with intimidation by men in an organization as typically seems that women always have more to prove than men?
Yeah. Well, that is a question that even the developing world has been grasping grasping with for many, many, many decades. You know, having been a minority engineer myself in corporate America, it can be intimidating. It's lonely. For women, especially, you know, I'm not a woman, but if I felt the way that I felt on certain instances, I could just imagine. Now, I've had the opportunity of working in 2 universities where the goal is gender balance. At Ashesi, we're almost getting to 50-50. At Academic City, we're about 34% female, and we are working towards it. I've had to mentor a lot of female students in the past. I had one recently, maybe about a year or 2 ago, who came up to me and she wanted to change her major from computer engineering into computer science. And then later on, she wanted to do IT. So I asked where she was from, and she comes from, you know, one of these impoverished communities in Accra, basically one of our ghettos. And she was so adamant about switching because she was intimidated. And I asked her, I said, when you were growing up, did you get access to any female engineers in your environment? She said, no. Do you know any female engineers? She said, no. And I said, don't you want to be a role model for the girls in your neighborhood, that they will get advantage of what you did not? To be a female engineer, computer scientist, a first of its kind, a computer engineer, first of its kind to come from your neighborhood. And so she stayed with it. So I think, you know, instead of asking the question how they will deal with it, I will flip it and I'll say that our male colleagues, whether they are educators or scientists, have to support female empowerment in a deliberate way. In a deliberate way, because there is really no room for them right now. Everything they do is question, people doubt them. There is subtle sexism that they have to deal with. And you know, unless you are at the receiving end, some of these things are not transparent because they are not intended to be detected. So they are sent under the radar. It is only to the intended recipient that these things becomes obvious. And then when they complain, everybody say, oh, you are crazy, nothing is happening here. We've had 20 other women came through here. My advice is, when people do complain, listen to them, because it is not done in a way that is easily detectable. It's like racism. It's like tribalism. People don't want to be caught. People don't want to be labeled, but they are able to pass synaptically the message that they want to the recipients, that you don't belong here. And when you are in leadership positions, these are the things that you have to be cognizant of. Just one more point to that. A couple of years ago, I met a director general or a deputy director general of one of our science organizations. And I asked her why she doesn't have 50% of her workforce being female. He said, oh, the women are not interested in being promoted. They just want to go have babies and raise families. And that's one of the reasons. And so I challenged her, and she was not happy with me. I said, you see, do you have programs for young kids from kindergarten all the way to young females from kindergarten to high school where you are preparing them to be the next generation scientists? Because if you are not preparing the next batch, you are not going to find them. I said, secondly, when women take off for maternity and come back, are they demoted or do they have access to being promoted? And then I said, you know, the interesting thing, the most ironic thing about life is that the men that are in positions of power often forget that their mothers are women, their sisters are women, their daughters are women. And if you don't support women empowerment, you're actually shooting yourself on the foot. So Gertrude, I understand the challenges. I don't know them. I understand the challenges that you are facing, but it is time for us, the men in power, to make room, to make an allowance.
Thank you so much, Prof. I think that I see Dr. Chris Miles. Please shoot.
Thank you, Dr. Clenham, for putting together this session. Prof, thank you for your advice and some of the guidances that you provide. I'm also a Ghanaian working here in South Africa. Will you advise a young scientist, a Ghanaian, to return to Ghana and give their skills and expertise? What have been your challenges since you returned?
Okay, Chris, Prof, before you answer that question, let me flip it over. Would you advise an African that is somewhere in a much developed country or in a developed country to come back home to take up challenges? That is I think, let me, so that it encompasses everyone.
Okay. So that's a very interesting question, and I'll answer it in multiple ways. So the first answer I will give is that if you are a successful African engineer or scientist anywhere in the world, you don't have to be in Africa to make an impact. That is the beauty of our profession. If you discover something that impacts human life, it doesn't matter whether you are in the mountains of Afghanistan or Nima, that impact will be felt. So that's one, and that's the easiest one. The second one is that if you want to go beyond impact and you want to support national development, you have to be on the ground. Now, being on the ground is really the reality check. It is very, very difficult to be on the ground. If you come in and you are not already a professor, trying to become a full professor here is like trying to kiss Saddam Hussein, because the requirements are defined around what works here. So if you have 40 patents, all of a sudden patents will no longer be a criteria for being a professor. Either they don't understand it or they don't value it. So that is eliminated. If you are young, it could impact you. They say, well, I became a professor when I was 55 years or 60 years old. How can a 25, 30-year-old become a full professor? You have to wait. You have to join the queue. So it is not really a knowledge-driven, informed society. People tend to feel more, it's all feely-feely. How people feel needs to happen. So look, my advice is that if you want to come back home and work, you need to come sooner. If you come later, you'll be more frustrated because people want you to come and join the queue. People want you to pay your dues. People want you to endure some of the frustrations that they endure. Departments want you to join the queue and wait till the chair retires so that the musical chairs get shifted. That is the grim reality of it. I came because I wanted to come. I believe in the mission that Ashesi offered to build a new generation of Africans who will take their destiny into their own hands, who will move the needle for Africa, who would think differently, and who will understand that, you know, you can be older than somebody, but it's okay for them to be promoted if they are smarter. So, you know, it's when I went to the US 30 years ago, we were 15, and I'm the only one that came back. One came back in the 90s. After undergrad, she was so frustrated, she left and never came back. I've been back 6 years, and usually if you can stay past 5 years, you are in it, you know. But until we build a critical mass of returnees with global view, global experience in this place, it's going to be very difficult to change much. Because everybody talks the talk. Everybody expresses the same frustrations that you will express. But the desire to change, I haven't seen it.
Thank you so much, Prof. There is a question in the chat that says, is clean energy really feasible when looking at a large-scale prospect?
You know, this is a very politically charged question. Look, my take has always been that the issue of greenhouse has been an industrialized country problem. They have created this mess, and they have harvested the benefits of industrialization. They've created their workforce, they've built their scientists, they are beginning to look at alternative sources of energy. Now, in the developed world, somebody said earlier, you know, less than 50% of households have access to electricity. And so we can't even talk about electricity prices at a level that can support industrialization. So what are we left with? Can we transition directly from this crisis into clean energy? That is the question. Now, you know, from my personal perspective, I almost need to also industrialize first and start having this conversation. That's my first instinct. Says, can we industrialize first before we sit at the table and start signing non-proliferation agreements like we did with nuclear, and sign contracts that we don't really understand, contracts that 50 years later comes back to bite us? So I don't know. I think we have enough sand here to start transitioning to solar. But as we can tell from the previous discussions, the will is not there. You know, we are rather buying solar panels from the Swedes, from Sweden, from Norway, from Denmark, in places where they have very little access to sunlight all year round. And so if it is going to be another strategy where we cannot indigenize the development of clean tech, but we are going to rely again on procurement, then it is a problem. It is a problem because the challenges we have here with unemployment, graduate unemployment, is because the monies are spent in procuring stuff and not building anything. So if clean energy means going back to the Nordics and buying flexible solar panels that we all install in our homes, then the problem is the same. And I'll tell you this on the record, that if you actually go to the low-lying countries, the Hollands, the Swedes, the Nordics, and you ask for research money in green energy, you are going to get money. But if you ask them for money to build generators to produce electricity, they're not going to give it to you. Because who is going to buy their generators? Who is going to buy their high precision equipment if you can build it? So we've been caught up in this procurement game. You know, of course they will invest in climate because they are the low-lying areas in the world. Any drop in temperature works for them than anybody else. You know, they're not going to be swallowed by the sea. So clean energy for me is yes. But I wouldn't mind if we also go into coal a little bit to solve our energy problems before we start getting ambitious. And that is my personal, that's my personal take.
Thank you so much, Prof. I think it is, before I go to my colleague Matome's question, I think it is Professor Ali Mazrui that said, Africa produces what it doesn't consume and consume what it doesn't produce. So I think that is something that we need to think about. Now, my good friend and colleague says, Prof. Okay, let me pick it up now. He said, how do we develop a comprehensive support system for young undergraduates from disadvantaged communities across Africa who may easily question their capabilities and end up dropping out? I think this is a question that hit home.
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, the simple answer is I don't know. I really don't know how we can do that. And I say this because, look, recently, the government of Ghana implemented free SHS, which means that whether you are rich or poor, you are going to get access to high school education. Now, my question is, high school education is not good enough. You need to make sure that it is quality high school education. It is quality high school education. And to have quality high school education, you need quality institutions, quality equipment, quality buildings. You know, it can't be free and also be free of knowledge. So that's one. The second point is that I live in a very little village, and each time I drive by the school on my way to work, I see the kids standing there and singing the national anthem. And I'm wondering, how many kids from this institution ever made it to the university? We don't have those numbers. We don't have the statistics. It would be nice to have the statistics from the inception of an institution, a tracer studies, to see the full impact of the experience beyond that institution. Where do the kids go? Do they go into a black hole? So unless we can actually collect and consume this kind of data, building that network is impossible. When I first came, there was a kid from my old high school that tried to commit suicide, and it was on the internet. And I assembled a team of people, and we started looking into the possibilities of preventing him from killing himself. We eventually got him into college. We will contribute money every semester and send him. And in his final year, final semester, he dropped out, and he has since disappeared. So where he is, we don't know. So the question is, you can put this team together if there are no mechanism in place to follow up, to make sure that these kids are succeeding, it will be an exercise in futility. To be an exercise in futility. One of the things that I've been championing is that if we don't have money to build science schools all across the nation, why don't we go district by district? Every district that has 5 high schools, could one of those high schools be a science and technology school? So that you don't sprinkle the equipment over 5 schools or 6 schools, you can have them concentrated in one place and let the science students go there, even if you have to schedule them by day, so that each school can get access to quality equipment. What we've been doing right now is just doing the same thing over and over again, not only expecting a different result, but we're actually expecting a miracle. So let me not be the pessimist. I think if there is the will to put that infrastructure in place, there is no reason why we can't do that. This continent continues to produce some of the most brilliant people. We don't lack intelligence. What we lack is translating that intellect into outcomes that builds our society. That is the problem.
Thank you so much, Prof. I think that a quick one, I think we are getting there slowly. A quick one says that, Prof, how best will you advise one to find a business mentor?
Okay, so that's quite interesting, because I was a guest lecturer 3 days ago, and one of the things that I talked about is that we configure our graduates for the 3-4 years they stay with us, that when you get a degree, when we put that piece of paper in your hands, you can go out there and find a job. So we train finders, job hunters. It's what we are good at producing from our universities. And we need to start reconfiguring them to become job creators themselves. But the advice I gave this team was, there is so much overemphasis on graduates going to get money. One of the subtle things that I think could work is volunteering. To volunteer for a job, to shadow somebody, and figure out exactly what they do, how they do what they do. And the Igbos of Nigeria, as an outcome of the Civil War adversity, built a network where young men from villages will go into the cities and apprentice under Igbo businessmen. For about 5 years, they served them loyally, biblically, like what Jacob did for Rachel. And after 5 years, they get a seed money. Some even get a portion of the business. And this chain reaction is what has made the Igbo businessmen the envy of the world. And they do the same for their females. But instead of them leaving home, they actually stay at home and learn a trade. So I think that I would be so flattered if a student were to come to me and say, Dr. Fred, I would like to shadow you once a week for the next 6 months so that I can learn what you do. That is the beginning of mentorship. That is the mentorship conversation. So I think you have to be bold to identify a pocket of people that you want to target for mentorship. And you need more than one, because it's not everyone who is going to say yes. But just remember the story of the salesperson. A no today could also mean the time is not right. And you have to be careful how you define successful people. So I'll give you a story. A friend of mine chose one of Ghana's top business leaders who has business interests in South Africa as well. And we'll meet him once a month. And so one day when she went for her session, he asked her, what will success look like for you? And she looked him straight in the eyes and said, if I can achieve a quarter of what you have achieved, I will define that as success.
I think we're having challenge with Prof. Yeah, I think we missed you there a bit. So, Prof, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear, sir.
Okay, I'm back.
Correct. Go ahead, sir.
Yes. So he sat across from her, leaned into his chair and said, I wasn't successful. I wasn't successful. I will give up everything I have right now to have my sons back, to have my wife back, because I was busy chasing money that my kids grew up without me. One just died, the other one is in jail, and my wife is dying at home of cancer. I'm not successful. You need to aspire to be better than me. So that goes to say it's so relative, but a short answer to your question is you need to identify people that you want to model after and find opportunities to engage them. If you don't know anybody that knows them, keep trying to make appointments until you get access to them. It is very flattering for you to sit across somebody that you've struggled so much to meet and say, sir, I've been trying, or sir or madam, I've been trying for the last year to get access to you. I admire so much what you do every single day. Can I shadow you? I will be willing to volunteer. And guess what? If you volunteer for this woman or man for 2 months and a position opens up in their business, they will never overlook you. It is way better than sending job applications into a black hole every month and going home psychologically satisfied that you've just applied for 20 jobs. Jobs don't come the same way again.
Thank you so much, Prof. Psychologically satisfied, but hungry in the pocket, by the way. I think Farinani, please go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'd like to first thank Professor for such profound advices that you're giving us. Yeah, but my question, Prof, is like as a young aspiring scientist or researcher, how important is the balance between the industry experience and just research or academics. What advice would you give to me as a young aspiring researcher in that regard? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a profound question. So look, I think it's about interest also. If you want to be a researcher and that's what your pulse races every day for, of course, the focus could be on your pure applied research. If you are interested in transitioning ideas from your lab into the marketplace, which is more on the applied research side, I have seen instances where academics have actually gone on sabbatical and spent some time in industry. Yes. It could help shape your research objectives and your career objectives as well. I think sometimes when we spend too much time in the lab, we get cut off from the world of reality also, right? So sometimes you feel you are the cutting edge, but cutting edge could also be coming from industry. If you look at the whole 3D revolution, industry was actually championing it. We spent some time at Adidas in the early 2000s trying to figure out how to take rapid prototype machines and actually use them to make medical devices. And Adidas was actually a pioneer in using 3D digital technology to produce shoe laces for marketing purposes, for focus group analysis. I also think that, look, if you want to go to graduate school and do profound things, finish your degree in a very timely manner, a little bit of industry experience could also inform your research trajectory. So I think it's a symbiotic relationship. In countries where they've met each other halfway, have seen profound developments, both in the scientific communities and in industry. I started off, of course, doing the PhD for about 2 years and then going to industry and then trying to finish it in the first 3 years I was in industry. And I think most of the stuff that I was able to do was because I was in the intersection of both worlds. Being at that intersection, you know, when you have two Venn diagrams where they intersect is profound. If you have 3 Venn diagrams where all 3 intersect in the middle are profound places. So I think it's a balancing act. I would say that, you know, leaving academia to spend time in industry is a stretch goal, but it will definitely inform what you want to do in the lab. I think leaving industry also and going into the classroom for some time helps you bring new perspectives as well. So look, my advice is that you have to follow your instincts, you have to follow your aspirations and the contributions that you want to make. And then you can decide whether it's 40-60 in one direction or 60-40 in the other direction. But both worlds are exciting worlds to be in.
Thank you so much, Prof. I think our time, we are far behind time. I know we would want to ask a lot more, but I think I want to give some few minutes, a minute or two to my boss to say some few things. So Prof. Genga, over to you, sir.
Desmond, thank you for catching me on the spot there. This has truly been an enriching, empowering session. Thank you so much, Prof. Mandalori, for just coming through, sharing your wisdom. This is what we believe is pushing the needle. I think by sharing a lot of this information, you really spread the knowledge all over the continent, because we have people from different spheres of life, as you've heard from some of the people who have spoken today. And we'll recorded this session. We'll share it with the different upcoming researchers that it's not just enough to work very hard in the lab and put it on a shelf. You have the great skills and minds that you've mentioned today who are here that can actually be involved either at a policy level, at an industry level, and even at a top governance level in their states or in their countries to push the needle. So we welcome the knowledge that has been shared here, and we will decimate it as far as we can. Desmond as well, thank you so much for putting this together. This is truly a leading mind on our continent, and we've been enriched greatly. And I pray and hope that we'll share the knowledge wherever we go. Thank you to everyone who has attended as well.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think, Andrew, I will do you a bit of injustice if I don't say your questions. So I think that I should. And I must also say that Prof has been at the forefront of developing low-cost ventilators when the COVID issue happened. He used basically second-year and third-year students to develop that. But Prof, the question is, what advice can you give to graduates with regards to the skills that they should have in this era of COVID-19? I know you are more problem-based learning, exponential thinking, and so I think that this question will be the one that you would answer, and then we can bring this particular session to close. Go for it, sir.
Yeah. So that's a very interesting question. As I intimated earlier, that this continent doesn't like knowledge. We are brilliant people. What we need to focus on is skills, and for me, skills is a translation of knowledge. That's a tangible rep of what knowledge really is. I think that students should focus on doing internships in areas that they are interested in. Build something, touch something, experience something, contextualize something. If you're an engineer in today's world, you need to be able to do solid modeling, 3D modeling. I mean, that's a communication tool. Journalists speak and write. Engineers have things to show. So you need to be able to model, to sketch. That's a skill that will take you very far, because most of your customers are not going to be able to understand the things that you articulated. But if you sketch them, they will be able to understand them. I think, we are all talking big data. We're talking genomics. We're talking AI. These are no longer in the purview of roboticists and AI guys, or biologists for that matter. Our kids are going to grow up speaking a scientific language, and it's not going to be Mandarin or English. It's going to be the language of science. And so we need to be able to learn some programming. I think independent of what your graduate degree is, whether you are in marketing dealing with digital analytics, whether you're a mathematician dealing with statistics, a finance person looking at data, you are going to need the tools, even tools as simple as Excel, to be able to interpret data, take data into information. I think if you have these two skills, and the third one I would say is that you need a language. If you're a West African, make sure that you can speak a little bit of French, because the advantage you're going to get is that you only have 5 English-speaking countries on the West Coast. Everyone else is French. And so when multinational companies start coming into this part of the world, they're going to be able to, they're going to employ people who are bilingual. So learn a new language, learn to play an instrument, learn to play a piano. It will amaze you the other things you are able to learn when you move away from your comfort zone. If you don't own an Arduino kit, buy one. It doesn't matter if your major is music or your major is computer science. If you can follow instructions in the book and build something new, how exciting would that be? Because think about it. If you're a CEO of a company, a Fortune 500 company, the only time you stay in business is if you can come up with new creative products. So can you imagine being a CEO, building a new Arduino kit, building a traffic light? You can't say you're not an engineer, because whatever you are doing, if you don't come up with new creative solutions, your organization will not survive. So find reasons that push you away from your home. That is where creativity comes from. That's where innovation comes from. And if you can apply these experiences in whatever you're doing, I think you will be successful.
you so much, Prof. And we want to thank you, and also thank you so much, my boss. I also see that we have some few other lecturers in the platform. I want to thank you all. And I think that as an engineer or as a scientist, Robert Langer is one of the guys that you should just go look him up and see some of the things that he's been doing. Now we've been given some of the advice and then the tools we need to succeed. Now the onus lies on you to use this to make sure that you become a better version of yourself. And like Prof said, we are to transition from that area of always wanting an employment to start thinking, how do I become the employer? And to do that, also you need to shadow. So it's also very important. Anything that will last takes time. It takes time to build. So it is very, very important that we build ourselves, we tool ourselves in a way such that we can be able to leverage all the things that will come as we journey in this life. So it is very important that we take these wisdom nuggets and then use them. And as you have also noticed, that one tool is with the engineers that have been speaking to us, or the people that have been speaking to us, is their ability to communicate. I told you the story about Apollos and Cassandra. If you don't know how to communicate your ideas effectively, if you don't know how to convince people to be able to help you succeed, then it's also going to be very difficult. Currently, this morning, there was a news item that talked about Cape Town becoming the hub, the technological hub of Africa. These are some of the things. Prof has also touched on the fact that we need to learn some programming languages, something like Excel, learn how to model with Excel and things like that. These are some of the things that will make sure that you are ready for the skills that is needed in the 21st century, so that together we can co-create, we can cross-pollinate, and we can make sure that after all these academic degrees are done, we will be able to point something tangible that this exercise of intellectual curiosity took us to. So I also want to thank you all for coming. Next week, I would see you again, where we'll be talking about communication, giving your research a voice. And please make sure that you attend. I also want to say that this video is recorded. I have the slide deck, which I will share with all of you. So make sure that you attend, and let us just not learn what is in the books. Let us learn skills that is relevant for the future. I also want to thank all the people that helped, my team and my bosses. Thank you so much for coming. And this meeting is adjourned. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.